Today I'm going to show you how to turn these into the most versatile food you could ever have in your pantry. Right after this. Hi garden maters, welcome to Corner Homestead. So, I know the end of the growing season is fast approaching, but if you still have a lot of your maters left over and you're not quite sure what you want to do with them, I've got the perfect option for you, and it is the most versatile food that you could put into your pantry because you can use it in many different ways. So today I'm going to show you how to turn these gorgeous maters into a long-term storage tomato powder. So before we start, I want to let you know that doing tomatoes can take an awful long time in the dehydrator depending on their ripeness. Now my tomatoes, as you can see, they are fully ripe, so they will need longer time to dehydrate than one that's not so juicy. Of course, tomatoes are so full of water, going to need that extra time. So I have to do these in stages in my dehydrator, but it always works out great in the end. So the first stage, of course, is to get our tomatoes sliced and put onto the trays. So the only thing I do with my tomatoes, I want to make sure that all these creases are out of them. So I just go ahead and cut them out. Just like that. I want to keep them as clean as possible. So once you have them exactly the way you want, you can either cut them into thin wedges or into slices. I always do mine in slices. If you do the wedges, and actually it's going to take just a little bit longer probably to dehydrate. So I'll go ahead and get all of my tomatoes done. I have them in all different sizes, and then I'll get them on the trays. So when I lay out my tomatoes, I use my silicone mats. You could put them directly onto the trays if you want. I just choose not to because I don't want them to stick and I don't want them to get all nasty and the juice be dripping down to the bottom of the dehydrator. I just don't want to deal with all that mess. So I put them on my silicone sheets. If you have the plastic sheets, plastic mesh sheets, those are also good to use. My silicone sheets work perfectly well. Okay, so I have the tomatoes all sliced. Now it's time to get them into the dehydrator. These are going to dehydrate for a very long time. A lot of them were overly ripe. Should have been used up a while ago, but it's okay. You can still use them. It's just going to take longer to dehydrate. So I put these in at 140 degrees, and they will dehydrate for about 24 hours. You want them as dry as possible. I will keep a check on them in between, as always. But because these are so very heavy, so very full of water, a good 23-24 hours to start. Okay, so I just put those tomatoes into the dehydrator to start getting them dried out, and these I took out. They have been dehydrating for 14 hours. Now they will come off the trays very easy, but they're very sticky, which tells you there's still a lot of moisture in these tomatoes. So because I start these on my silicone mats, they can't get the proper airflow up there to really get them dehydrated in a better amount of time. If you're using your mesh mats or your mesh trays, you probably will not have this problem. But for now, I'm going to take these off of the trays, the silicone trays, and put them onto my regular trays so that they will get the proper airflow, and they will go back in the dehydrator along with the ones I just put in there, probably for about another 10 to 12 hours, and then we'll start getting them powdered up. And most likely they may have to go for a third time after they're powdered, because we need them very, very dry. The drier the better for longer term storage. So I'll be back with you when it's time to start powdering up these tomatoes. Okay, so here we are 12 hours later. Once again, this time our tomatoes are very nice and dry, but they still feel a little bit sticky, which tells me they still, believe it or not, are not completely dry. But they are good enough now after 24 straight hours to start powdering them up. We're going to do that, and then they will have to go back in yet again to finish drying. So we'll grind these up, and then we will get them sifted through the strainer, and we'll be ready for step number 3. So you can see this is a pure indication that they are definitely not dry, because it's going to stick all inside the lid. And of course, it's not going to look so pretty inside. It'll stick in there as well. I just use my brush. We keep grinding and grinding and grinding until we have it as fine as we can get it. Once we get it all ground up as best as we can, we'll get it back in the dehydrator, all of the powder, to finish dehydrating. Okay, so I want to show you. You can see it will still clump in the bowl. But the pure indication of how you can tell that this is not completely dry, not only will it stick and clump like this, but even if it looks dry, you pick it up, you squeeze some of it, and if it does that, you know it's not dry. So to put it back in, I'm just going to put down my silicone mat, and we'll go ahead and put it onto the mat. I'm just going to take a spoon and I'm going to smooth it out as best as I can and as even as I can. Okay, so believe it or not, all 4 of those trays of tomatoes fit onto this one tray of tomato powder now. So back into the dehydrator, this will go probably for another 12 to 14 hours. Like I said, you want it as dry as possible. When it comes back out of the dehydrator and it's all completely dry, good thing is it's already powdered. So all I have to do is put it into the strainer and strain it once again. Then we'll put it into our bags along with our silica and oxygen absorber packets, and it'll be done. So back in the dehydrator, this time at 145 degrees for at least another 12 to 14 hours. Be back then. Okay, so it is late. The tomato powder has been dehydrating for another total of 12 hours. It should be well and dry now. So the only thing I'm going to do, strain it once again and then check it to make sure that it is 100% dry. Oh, look at that, how she flows. That, I can tell you right now, is perfect. Here we go. Oh, see that? So you want it to be able to fling around like that. And of course, the true test. No more sticking together. It is perfect. Perfect. This is what we want, just like when I did the egg powder. It has to flow freely. And this is ready to be bagged up. So as usual, if you're going to be using your tomato powder pretty often, you can opt to put it into a mason jar or any other type of jar. Just please make sure you at least put a silica gel in to keep the moisture out. This tomato powder I am not going to be using for a while, so it's going to go into my Mylar bag. I'm just going to put it into a small one because this little bag is going to hold a lot of powder. These are the 2-ounce bags. Again, if you're using the Mylar bags, make sure you put in a silica gel for the moisture and an oxygen absorber for the air. You want to keep it all out. But in this bag, it will last up to 25 years. So I'll put it in the bag and then I'm going to let you know exactly what you can use this wonderful tomato powder for. It is extremely versatile. Stay with me. Okay, so inside of this pouch I managed to put in 12 tablespoons of tomato powder. I can't really say how much that was originally in tomatoes because I just didn't weigh them. So this time of year when I have the tomatoes and it's just a few here and there on the vine, I just pick them and dehydrate them. Best thing is to long-term storage them in powder form. Why powder? Like I said, it is so versatile. It is crazy how much you can do with the tomato powder. If you want to make tomato paste, tomato soup, tomato juice, tomato sauce, it can all be done with tomato powder. Now to make tomato paste from powder form, you simply add 2 parts powder to 1 part water. So say 2 tablespoons of powder to 1 tablespoon of water. You'll know when you have it because it'll have that paste consistency. Now to make a tomato sauce from powder, you would do 1 part powder to 6 parts water. Preferably when you're adding the water, you want to start with a hot water or a very, very warm water because it hydrates the powder better. Now to make tomato juice or tomato soup from powder, you would take 2 to 4 tablespoons of the tomato powder and mix it with 1 cup of hot water. You would also add some salt, just to taste, about 1/4 teaspoon or so. And that is it. You would have either tomato juice or tomato soup. So like I said, there are so many benefits to having tomato powder in your pantry. I do have a mason jar in there now from a batch that I already powdered before, but now I'm working on putting it into long-term storage in the Mylar bags. So now that the powder is in here with the oxygen absorber and the silica gel to keep out the moisture in the air, all I've got to do is heat seal the top, and this will go into my emergency food storage and be good for up to 25 years. Be sure to label it, which I will do. So I hope if you have extra tomatoes and you're not quite sure what to do with them because you've got so much on your shelf already, which is always a good thing, I hope you consider doing the tomato powder. It is just one of the best things that you can have, whether you're in your pantry or in your emergency food storage. So yes, it does take quite a while to dehydrate tomatoes, basically because they are so full of juice and you want to make sure they are 100% dry. Now, it took me in total 36 hours to dehydrate them because I started them out on the silicone mats. I think if you have the mesh mats, it's going to allow that airflow to go through a little bit better from the start, and you won't have to spend so much time. But basically, dehydrate them and get them as dry as you possibly can before you go to powder them. If you have any of that stickiness, you want to make sure to get it back in. Now, probably 12 extra hours of the powder was a little obsessive for me, but I wanted to be sure that it was 100% dry, because like I said, moisture is definitely the enemy when it comes to dehydrated goods. So I wanted to be sure that it's definitely no chance of moisture anywhere in my packet. So if you have the mesh mats and you start them out on that, you might be able to get away with about 24 hours total, maybe 30. Not quite sure because it's going to depend on your dehydrator. I did mine at 140, but when I put the powder back in, I bumped up that heat to 145. Just made for better drying. So again, it's going to depend on your dehydrator, and it's going to depend for sure on the tomatoes you're using. If they are overly ripe, which some of mine were, it's going to take longer. So I hope I was able to help you out just a little bit on preserving your tomatoes. And I thank you, even though it's been a long process, I thank you for staying with me. So if you haven't already subscribed, please do. Love to have you as part of the community. Love to watch the Garden Maters grow. So until next time, I love y'all. Take care. God bless. And I'll see you on the next video.